this person must have been here before. This person must have gone through. This person, the knowledge that is here, the wisdom that is here, must have been from many other generations, and that we don't have one God as Africans. When we speak of Ramasedi, that is very explanatory. Ramasedi means the one who owns light and different sources of light. I say Ramasedi, Ramasedi, various sources of light.
In a world where Africans have lost their roots, it has become of vital importance to document our ways. In an effort to reverse the brainwashing of the past, where we were made to believe our ways are demonic, we are pressed to create dignified and respectful platforms to unpack our spiritual ways. The views and opinions expressed in this episode are those of the guest and do not necessarily reflect the beliefs or position of this channel, its hosts, or affiliates. This podcast is a platform for open discussions and exploration of various perspectives, including controversial and unconventional ideas. We encourage viewers to think critically, do their own research, and form their own opinions. The content is for informational and entertainment purposes only and should not be taken as fact, advice, or an endorsement of any specific viewpoint. Viewers' discretion is advised. Umoya ulight, umoya ubright. Welcome to another episode of MOYA. Thank you so much for all the support you're giving us. We see you, the numbers are going up. We love it. Thank you for watching the adverts, except for that other one that we discovered gets snuck in here. And it does not belong with our content, guys. So you can skip that specific advert. If you know, you know. Thank you for liking, sharing, and subscribing, and sharing with your families. We are getting lots of feedback. Siyabulela kakhulu, guys. Siyabulela. So, as you know, last year, we lost one of the teachers of this channel, Dr. Mocholoko Zulumathabo Zulu. It was a very difficult time for us, and it's been difficult to process, but now it's a year later, and now we're starting to be ready for the tribute, because that was quite a big blow to the African community at large, because that was our teacher in terms of African spirituality, metaphysics. There are languages and things that Dr. Zulu, we wouldn't have understood if it was not for him. And luckily, he passed on his information to brothers, to people that his soul was mated with. And one of those is LEHASA Moloi. Siyabulela for taking the time out. This is not an easy conversation, you know.
No, Mamiya. Thank you for inviting us. Yeah.
So we're talking Zulumathabo Zulu. And for those who are not as privileged as us, it's important for us to unpack who the man was, because we can't allow his name to be erased or to die away. So can you give us who the man was, how you guys met, the whole thing? We are your ears this afternoon.
Thank you. Sure, the man with very multiple identity, having multiple personality is a problem, but having multiple identity, it's a great blessing, because it means that you have actually multiplied even before you depart. You have multiplied in different topics, different spaces, and this is who he was. You had people that knew him as an academic. Before many found out about him, there were people that experienced him as this technology buff and that was working for this great corporates who spent time in Canada doing amazing things. And then later on, you know, there are those that then met MOCHOLOKO, who brought a lot of enlightenment into cosmology, into metaphysics, into things that many of us wouldn't have even paid mind to. You know, I always remember my first discussion with him was actually based on the African names of planets. You know, and it becomes very difficult when you have always known certain and all these planets, and someone comes and says, that one Kitosa. And you know, he had this energy about him and around him, and this excitement, undying, unending excitement when he spoke about these issues and that, and you will hear it in his voice, in the change of tone, and when you speak to him and he says, Kitosa, you know, and and he will start explaining this dosa, you know, and I remember when we had that discussion, I grew up knowing from my grandmother and the elders, there's a saying that always said to meaning I will, you know, and someone got angry and he said, I'll show you what, and then he said, I'll show you and that it meant that there is this dosa which has got its puppies or its calves with it. And when he came back and he explained it, and he said, this is what this planet is called because it has got all these moons around it. And then you realize, oh, so this is where the saying came from. So the knowledge that he had was amazing. We have gotten to the space as people where we really marvel around intelligence so much that we miss the opportunity to see knowledge. You know, intelligence always has got its weakness in that it lacks experience. Yeah. And that is why most of the time you find intelligence is not humble, because it doesn't have experience.
It knows too much.
It knows too much. It's very arrogant. But when you meet knowledge, you would find that knowledge is very humble. Knowledge has got humility in it because it has experience. And this is what he encompassed. He had knowledge. And knowledge also, you know, intelligence is yours, Mamia. You're intelligent and you die with your intelligence because it's yours. You know, it's the ability of what your mind can do, can capture, can analyze, can solve. So it will die with you because it belongs to that mind. But when we speak about wisdom, wisdom is passed on. And that is why the wisdom of our great forebearers still lives with us, amongst us, because it can be passed on. And this is the type of wisdom you had when you spoke with him. You know, you could be able to tell that this is his age, and the things that he's talking about, there is no way of one being able to amass, accumulate, and learn by themselves without that knowledge being passed from a certain generation. So knowledge is continuous because as it is passed on in that, it keeps on evolving in that. And when you meet someone who's got that knowledge, you can also tell Amatonga from this person. You can tell Bahulu le Bahulu Hulu from this person speaking, because you can hear that it is generational. And this is what you felt when you spoke to Mocholoko. This is not only what you heard, you could feel it. Our first meeting with him was from the perspective or the concept of him being Moloi. He always was very proud to talk of his multiple mothers. Moloi was the one that had given birth to him. And so we then met with him to talk about this, because at the stage also he was very passionate about finding out the story of the Moloi people and that. And we shared that with him.
Please put that in context. Natswa guy was your long lost brother. What do you mean?
Like
when he first pops up into your world, how is that?
So I was reading actually, and as I was reading, I came across his article, and this article he was actually telling his journey, and how he moved from one family into another family, how he was raised by another mother instead of his mother and that. And then I realized he was from Moloi and that. And I said, well, look, I was at a journey myself of documenting the Moloi people, whether prominent or not, and I wanted to meet people to tell me about their families. Where do they come from? Because the Moloi family and that it is the royal family of the Macholokwe people. But you sit and you think that how was it so dispersed into so many areas in the country? But what was intriguing about him was that he carried two surnames from the royal families. He carried a Zulu surname, which is the royalty surname from the Zulu clan and or nation, and the Moloi, which is from the Macholokwe. And that's when I then said, I need to talk to him and speak with him a little bit and that. And this is, by the way, where the name Madibuseng was coming from. One of the mothers was Madibuseng and that. So that's where the name was coming from. So it is such things. Madisebo,
yeah.
Madisebo, yes. Mm-hmm. So one was Madisebo, and this is where
that was his mom's name.
It was one of the mothers, yes.
Okay.
So with him and that, he never liked to differentiate the mothers between the biological mother and the foster mother and that. He would just call them my mother Madibuseng and my mother so and so. So that is why it then becomes also very difficult for one to remember exactly which was which, who actually gave birth to him and that, because he never saw them in that eye. He just saw two mothers. So it was a very beautiful journey.
So you reached out to him?
I reached out to him and I said to him...
How old are you at this time?
At this time, I must have been in my early 20s.
Interesting.
I must have been in my early 20s and that. At that time, Mamiha, I was making waves in the corporate world. I was making waves in the corporate world. I was making waves as an entrepreneur in that. And at that stage, my grandmother, who held the regency, was still alive. And, I still, at that time, didn't want to have really anything to do with this, but sort of knew that I'm not going to be able to run away from this. So I need to know who we are and everything. And this is the time when I met him, a very critical time at my life as well. And it was a journey that lasted us for many, many years, and every time,
No, don't cheat us, please. So when you meet him, what happens that day? You call him, he doesn't know who you are, or what happens?
So I called him because at that stage, the the articles that he was writing, he used to even put his contact details on the articles. And this is the time when also he started writing a lot about cosmology, the African philosophy, you know, and as he was talking about this topic, so I called him and I explained to him who I was. As I'm speaking to him, and then I remember very clearly, I you know, we speak and I tell him who I am, and then he says, "Oh, Makhosi, Makhosi amakhulu." And I say to him, "Look, I would like us to meet, you know, and have a chat and that." And the first time we met was at my office. Actually, he said, "Look, I'll come," and then we sit down, and we sat for hours. You know, we sat for hours. We spoke. When he arrived, I thought we'd speak only about the Moloi people. But we probably spoke 2 lines about the Moloi people. And much of our discussion was about culture, heritage, was about religion, was about the mindset that still inhabits us as Africans and what still limits what we can achieve and what we will ever be able to achieve. And I remember we were sitting and saying, before we can even start thinking of reclaiming anything that is ours, even our identity, we've got to first lose what we've got. And this is where the problem is at the moment, Mamia. When you see us as African people at this stage unable to achieve anything, it's because we are not taking the first step. And the first step says we need to empty the basket. Until we empty that basket, we only have got so much space in the basket to put new information. We need to empty the basket. Now the problem is that in emptying the basket is that you've got to be comfortable with losing what you have. And this is where it is. You know, if someone poured for you water in something, and you get somewhere and someone says, I wanna pour you this drink, you've got to take the decision to empty the water first in order to get the other drink in there. But the problem is that because you've got this water, you have been drinking this water, you like this water, and you've been told that this water is the source of life to you, it becomes very difficult for you to empty that water for something that you don't know much about. And I still believe in that today as much as I believed in it then when we met with him. And this was his purpose. His purpose was to empty the basket, or maybe to fill the basket with new information. But those that heard him were the ones that had emptied their baskets. And those ones who had completely emptied their baskets were able to absorb more of his teachings because their baskets were empty. The ones that were half full, quarter empty, didn't get much out of it. That concept means when you have got something in this basket, anything else that you get that you need to put in this basket, you question. And you question it with the knowledge of what is in the basket, not with a fresh mind. So when a person tells you something, you don't say, is this true or is it false? You say, but it is written like this in the books that I've read. So you haven't opened yourself into learning anything. So if the books that are written were telling lies, you are going to judge every story that you are being told based on the lies. And that's where the danger of it is. We still see it today in who we are as Africans. When someone comes and says to someone that, listen, as Africans, a moon It's very important to us. When someone comes and says to someone, I always tell the people that this whole issue of a omni-God, the only God, can never make sense in an African perspective. We don't have one God as Africans. When we speak of Ramasedi, that is very explanatory. Ramasedi means the one who owns light and different sources of light. I say Ramasedi, Ramasedi. Various sources of light. These various sources of light, it's the sun, it's the moon, it's the stars. This is Ramasedi. And when you look at this, and you look at other religions or spirituality concepts that exist in Africa, they come and they say, the Egyptian says the sun god is Ra. It's not coincidence. So when you look at these things and that, these are the things that we spoke about, me and him. And it's difficult for someone with a basket that is full, with someone that is reading books that tells him that there can be only one God, for you to come and tell this person that, but Africans have always had various. And the question that I get the most from people when I try to teach them this, then they say to me, but then who's the supreme one? Because the basket says there must be a supreme one. And when I say, but knowledge and belief doesn't point out to one being supreme. It says when they all come together, they then constitute the supreme God. When they all come together. So there isn't one supreme one in them. That's a very difficult concept to understand when your basket says that there is one supreme God who rules over everything. These were the things that he could understand, that we could speak about when we met. And it took us hours discussing these things and that. And this is where I think my respect for him came, and from there on we had many other discussions around this. I remember just about months before he passed on, I spoke to Gogo. I call her Maskeket. And when I spoke to her, and she says to me, Mocholoko has lost his leg. That was such a shock to me, because he was always, in my eyes, very healthy, and this is where one realizes that these bodies are vessels. And they are just, they're not even vessels that are equal to our souls and our spirits.
They're so fragile.
They are so fragile, so weak, so miniature, minute, completely insignificant to what our souls and spirits are. Because his spirit was a very unconquered spirit, extremely a giant of a spirit. And so when someone says he's lost a leg, and I remember I had to consult with myself and sit down and say, but losing a leg is not a sign of weakness to him, because this is just a vessel. Because in human understanding, When you lose a leg, when you lose an arm, you are no longer a complete human being who cannot do things that human beings can do. You can no longer run the fastest. You now don't have a leg and all these things. And this is when then I sat down and realized that sometimes we talk about this concept without understanding these concepts. And I visited, for me, that concept of what is being a human being. Being a human being is a very fragile thing. We are greater as spiritual beings. And that is why we, forever and every time, need to put the spiritual being ahead of everything. Because that is the one that is there for eternity, not the fragile one that we are going to lose. So these concepts are concepts that he taught a lot, about who we are, what a human being is, about the balance of life, and not just outside, but even the balance of your chakras. And these are concepts that, without understanding them, you find yourself very informed, very educated, informed, but yet lack knowledge. And unfortunately, this is what we find ourselves being in today's world.
So expand some more on the relationship, because it's nice, because we're learning the type of man he was just from your...
Yeah. So now after I had this issue about his leg, I sent him a message. And when I sent him a message, comforting him about the leg. And he didn't respond, which is very much like him. So he didn't respond to this. So I think after a couple of days or even a week and that, I called him. And when he picks up the phone, he was his very own self.
Makosi.
That shocked me, because I expected to find him down, low, broken. I expected to find him without a leg. This should tell in his voice that he has no leg. And when I spoke to him and he says to me, I haven't responded to your message. And I said, no, I realize. He says because I didn't have words to explain. I didn't have words to respond, because your message spoke very much to the human in me. And I like that. The human in me. Because when you look at it in a way that we understand, we are saying you are the soul and the spirit, and you are the soul and the spirit, you are in this human. But he says the human in me. So this human that is a body, which is in me as a spirit. So meaning that I have already ascended from the space of being flesh. So now this flesh, I'm no longer in the flesh, but the flesh is now in me. And he said, I have risen above a lost leg. He said to me, I'm frail. I said, I'm frail, and the body is experiencing, it's shutting down. It's a body. It's going through that process. but the spirit is growing. For me, that explained something very important. You see, Mamia, before the spirit will move from this realm to the next, it will grow. Right? It's not going to just live in. As long as you are in this realm, the spirit is still growing. When the spirit reaches maturity, it will then move from this realm. So as long as we are still here, it means that we are still here because we are still learning. And when we have learned what is enough for us to move to the second level or the next level, we then move to the next level. And this is what was meant in this comment. The spirit is still growing. We may not know exactly what our exact day is. We may not know the exact moment. But I now believe, from many people that we've spoken to, from many people that we've seen, from many experiences as people pass on, and you hear the people that had the last interaction with the person, and the person was not sick, and the person is gone. And then we say, but how did he know? He must have known this. The type of things the person says, the type of things the person does, when you look into it, you realize that it was preparing you for this person moving on. So in us, there is an inbuilt mechanism that tells our bodies, that tells us that we are now winding off, we are going. And when people say things to us, because as human beings in that, we do not think about the concept of death. Because, again, the basket that we carry, the concept of death has been painted as the ending, not the beginning. So we don't want to think about death because death scares us because it represents the end. And that is why we are unable to talk about death. But if we understood death in a concept that says we are moving from one to another, then death wouldn't scare us, because we'd be able to say, I am nearing my graduation because I am going to move to the next phase, which is a privilege, because I cannot move to the next phase until I have learned what I need to learn, the lessons that I need to capture that are going to prepare me and get me ready for that next level. So for me, when I was talking to him about this is what it meant. I still have got a WhatsApp that I sent him. My last WhatsApp to him was, I was inviting him to the royal event that I was going to have. And I said to him, I would like you to come on this day and that. And I said to him, but I'm going to send the driver to come and pick you up. He didn't respond. But I also had learned enough of him to understand that he was the person that moved a lot with spirit. And he would be the person that would not respond to something that you sent him for months. And then one day he just responds and say, today. So he didn't, and I just said, no, I know, he'll respond when he responds and that. And that is when then, I then got the message that he had now he had now passed. So when people are around us, it's very difficult for us to understand, see, and experience who they truly are. Because we expect them to be somewhat supernatural. We expect them to be this, there's a sort of word which says that mohale o utuma dichabe. So we don't see the greatness of those who live around us. It is the people from far lands that realizes and recognizes and sees it and wish to come and be around this wisdom, around this well, to come and shake a hand, to come and drink from this fountain. But those that are closest to that fountain and that, they figure out that there will always be water there. And once this well dries, and then they wish they had a drink from this well. And it is those from foreign lands that would have drunk from this well and nourished their souls. And this was the thing about him. The impact that he had globally, South Africans would not understand. The close-knit family would not understand, because they knew him as what they had given birth to, as they are. They knew him as their kin, as their bloodline. But those that knew him as a vessel of knowledge, of spirituality, were very lucky. And this is what I think from the experience with Mocholoko that we should take as people. We should learn to experience those around us also as spirits. And realize when our great forebearers has revisited us again through someone. Because I believe at times that this is what happens. That when you sit with someone and you speak with them, and you realize that even if you don't believe in coming back again in this world, even if you believe life is only once and you're gone. But at times when you sit and you listen to someone, then you realize that this person must have been here before. This person must have gone through. This person, the knowledge that is here, the wisdom that is here, must have been from many other generations and that. And once we can experience people in that way, I think life will be a little bit more meaningful than what we see.
For people who might not know who Dr. Zulu was, what can you say about his work? What did he do? Like if a young person's like, okay, what did this guy do?
So, when when today we see people and one thinks of a traditional healer, people talk of a sangoma, and they say, this is a sangoma. This is the concept of a sangoma. It's someone that must go epekreni and that and come back and walk bare feet and have beads and have this and this is what they can do. They can summon spirits. They can. You had someone here who didn't speak about just healing, who didn't speak just about uktagata, who could bring all these concepts together, when people think that, but Africans and astrology, where do Africans meet with astrology? It doesn't make sense. No. You had someone here that understood the impact of that in how Africans live, in the belief of Africans, in when the child is born, in the growth of a child, in the giving of a name. So he was not talking about one aspect of spirituality. And I think this is where a lot of people will miss it. That when someone comes and takes healing, it is one aspect of spirituality. In that spirituality and that, there is so many things that are in there. There is how African families are constituted in a spiritual understanding, in a spiritual realm. Why are they like that? And such concepts where you're not only talking about things from the perspective of what the books say, but what history says, what our folk stories of our elders tell, from our beliefs, from our praise poems. All those things, they come together to make up who we are as people. And I think his great work was making sure that we understand these things from an African perspective. So a young person that understands astrology and that, they understand that from just the concept of stars and moon and the axis of the earth, and this rotates so much. They know it only from that perspective. Yes. But he understood from even the perspective of what energies are being released when that happens. From the understanding of coming, when you say to him, there is going to be an eclipse and he would understand, what does it mean spiritually? What do you need to be aware of? What do you need to stay away from? What do you need to eat? What are the words that you should be saying? And that was the understanding that he had. So for me, I sum that up usually as the understanding of life. Because then you are not talking about one concept. And this is where it is. Many of us experience only certain factions of life. And we think we are living life. But it's very factional. We only understand 2, 3 of the 30 chapters, and we understand only 3 of that. And we think that we understand life. And for me, I think that he had spent valuable time in learning more about it. And when his journey or when his graduation came, yes, perhaps he hadn't learned everything. But he had learned enough for him to move on. And this is where, I always say that what determines if this is the end of you or if this is another step in your journey, it's about how much you have been able to learn in that space of life. Because we are given life in a fragile body, means that we have got a number of years to be able to learn these things. And if we don't learn them, and the time catches up with us in that, what does that mean? How are we able to move to the next realm when we haven't learned the critical things? Probably for that. Are we going to get to that realm as people who don't understand what they're supposed to be doing? Are we going to get there as lost souls? Or are we going to get there and still have a meaningful impact as what we've had in this world? So for me, these were the type of concepts that he understood. And for many years, people are going to read about this and talk about this. And I think also what he has done is that he has created and influenced enough people for this community to really thrive. Because I see now so many young people, I see now so much brilliant people that are taking these concepts that he was talking about and saying, let me have a look at it. And you look at the Madisebo Institute as well, into what it's meant to do, meant to achieve. And I think in steps and bounds and that, it's going to do exactly that. And it's going to teach these concepts to those that are going to go and say, but I want to understand and know this concept even deeper. And they will start getting more out of it. His love for mathematics and understanding for mathematics in an African way was amazing. You know, when you speak about traditional healing and that, you find many people who believe that people run to this when life,
yes,
when they fail in life, then they run to Bungoma. That's what people think, right? And people will say, yeah, no, when someone couldn't be an engineer and everything, they will go to Bungoma. This was a different case. It was someone that came out of there and back into this. So it will tell you that when he said things, when he looked at things, meant that he would have really analyzed it. He would have really analyzed it from his scientific standing, from his academic understanding, and he wouldn't just blow hot air. This were informed theories that he spoke, and that's why he was so fluent in things that he believed in, because he would have analyzed them, and he made sure that he digs deeper into everything that he was talking about. So I think you know, in as much as human beings, we will always feel that time was not enough. His time was enough. I think what he has given people, what he has given those that had emptied their baskets, was enough for them to be able to go out there with their baskets, with the knowledge to choose what belongs in my basket and what shouldn't I pick to put in my basket. And that's the most important journey of life. The journey of life, we are in this journey, we're walking around with these baskets, and we are putting into that basket to fill them. And without knowledge, we are going to pick everything and anything that we see, which might end up rotting the rest of the fruit that we have already picked in the basket. So it needs to be very, very careful of what is it that we put in this basket. What are we picking to put in this basket? And I think from his teachings, a lot have gotten to the space where they understand exactly what is it that they need to pick and put in the basket as Africans.
What should we take away? I mean, we're going to do these tributes to Dr. Zulu. So what can, for you, What qualities can we take away and add into our basket?
I think for me, the greatest thing that I have gotten out of his teachings and our discussions and everything was the greatness of who we are as Africans, was the urge to learn, not to accept things as they are presented to us, to be very proud and sure of who we are in light of anything that is said about us. Some of the concepts that he would have brought in and spoken about, I can tell you that many professors would have dismissed him right from the beginning in that. And later when you sit down and you realize that, but here it is proven. So I think what we need to get from him is the fact that we're much greater than what the world makes us to be. And this is not just an African say. You know, a lot of people look at us and they say, yeah, you know, these ones that are pushing the African agenda and this, you know, they're always talking about the brilliance of Africans and this. It's not just a say. When we sit down and we look, it proves every time to us. They did not bring civilization to Africa. They came to steal civilization from Africa. You see, if we look and think about this, from the 1400s and that, when they started coming into the spaces and that, they were not coming here because there was nothing here. They were coming here because they have heard about the civilization that was happening here. That was the interest of them coming here. Now, people say every time, you know, I hear every time people say, yeah, if the settlers didn't come with their ships here, where would Africa be? You'd still be uncivilized. You'd still be living in the bush. And I sit and say, but you see, this is exactly where it doesn't make sense. We, at that stage, were already building architectural masterpieces. We're building pyramids. They didn't understand what pyramids are. The fact that they are still studying pyramids today, thousands of years after these pyramids were built, tells you exactly the type of advanced technology we were in already. When you look at what pyramids are, and you will, when they tell you that this point had to let the light come in and what should happen and how they generated their own power and this from this architecture of the pyramid, tells you exactly what we understood about science. Mathematics. The Libombo tablet and that still shows how we understood mathematics, how we understood health sciences, how they used the Libombo and that to start calculating and counting menstruational time periods and that. All those things shows you that medicine was advanced with us. Geography was advanced with us. Architecture was advanced with us. Science, this is how advanced we were. So now, when we look from the 1400s and that, when they started coming here, Africa didn't go forward. Africa went backwards. So we wearing clothes? Oh, well, great. Great, we wearing clothes. We're not wearing animal skins. Great. What did we learn? What our forefathers then knew and understood, we can't match it with all the technology that we think we have. So we need to go back and understand that, to say we're much greater than we let ourselves believe when we are told. And his saying was exactly that, to say first we need to know who we are, because you cannot believe in what you don't know. We need first to know who we are. Then when we know who we are, then we can believe who we are. And when we have the belief in what we are, then we can improve who we are as Africans. And we can make great things. That is why even today, when you still look, yes, inventions might be happening in the West. But let's look who is coming with these inventions in the West. And we are still there. It is the foundation of our technologies and that are still giving birth to such greatness today. But we don't own that. We let ourselves be told who we are, because we are chasing that someone, we must comply so that someone does not charge us 50% tariffs. We play nice so that we don't upset someone, because if we upset this person, if we show who our friends are based on what they do for us. Friendship is about what you do for me. We are not even brave enough to take actions, to take decisions based on what we know people do for us. Because if we take those decisions, we will be hit with tariffs. If we take those decisions, we will be sanctioned. If we take decisions, we need to get out of that mentality. We need to be able to say, if you're going to chase me from the playground because I don't play by your rules, that's fine. My playground is bigger than yours. We are like kids where your father owns the land. Your family owns that piece of land. A friend comes and draws up a soccer field on that piece of land. And every time when you try to score a goal, he says, if you score, I'm taking my ball away. And you are worried about the ball when the soccer field is on your land. We are just like that even today. So we need to wake up to this reality. We need to wake up and say, but we're great. You didn't teach us jewelry. You swear jewelry from us. When you came here, we were wearing jewelry. That's what brought you here. Because fact of the matter is that they couldn't have been wearing jewelry where they came from. They don't have gold. So they made jewelry here. Why are they making us believe that they are better jewelry designers than us? These are the things that we need to learn. And I think from his teachings, it says this exactly. Know who you are. Understand who you are. Understand how the world around you works and how you control it spiritually. Because we control it spiritually before it comes to manifest. And those are the things that we need to learn.
And then lastly, if you could have a conversation with Dr. Zulu today, what question would you have for him that you still need to?
What is beyond the horizon? What is beyond the horizon? Spiritually, what is after this? If we could have an answer to that question, it will liberate Africans. Because that question is the question that has always been used to impoverish Africans. When you try to fight for what is yours, when you take a spear to go fight, to go confront the guy that came with the barrel of the gun to take your land, when you take a spear to go try to get that land back, you are told that You shall not kill because you will go to hell. You are always threatened with what is beyond the horizon. So if that myth of what is beyond the horizon could be debunked, we'll be great people. We'll be able to do great things without fear of the unknown. We will understand that where we're going, I need to be great here. I need the greatness here so that I can transcend there. But I would also, in that very same asking of what is beyond the horizon, it's what is beyond what Africa is today. Where is Africa going to be in the next 100 years? The raping and murdering of Africa hasn't stopped. It has just changed face. So now, Africa is not being robbed minerals. Africa is not being robbed land. Africa is being robbed the future. Get as many drugs in Africa as you possibly can so that you destroy the future. Pass laws into Africa that takes away integrity, that takes away their way of life, their belief. Pass laws that are going to destroy the future. Pass the laws that are going to allow children not to care of imvelaphi yabo. Give education that robs Africa of the future. Give education that creates employees so that they can work for you forever. Create dependency so that Africans completely forget how to farm, how to innovate, so that they can rely on you forever. What is beyond the horizon for Africa? Create divisions, cause havoc in Africa. Create the poverty in Africa that every leader that sits in leadership would want to steal as much as they can so that they prevent their future generations from being poor. So when you have done that, you have gotten everyone in Africa to worry about today and never about tomorrow. Report stats of how many are unemployed today. That's the stats that you must report. Never report the stats of how many have forgotten how to farm. Never report the stats of how many don't even know how to raise cows. So when you create that, you are no longer a robber that steals for today. You are now robbing the future today, and you can never be held accountable because when your theft is realized, you will no longer be there. So I would ask that from him and say, what is beyond the horizon? And when you have seen what is beyond the horizon, in the work that we have done, in the work that we still keep doing today, what do we need to change to make sure that we prevent that eventuality?
And then last question is, Did you locate him on the Moloi family tree?
His mother came from the Eastern Free State. His mother was a daughter of the Molois in the Eastern Free State. Now, one of the most difficult thing with the Molois, and that, as it is with most African families, especially even from a royalty perspective, was that so much was erased. So his mother was born in the Eastern Free State. Okay, so so that would be, you know, a lot of Macholoko in the areas of Castell, Bethlehem, Qwaqwa, Harrismith, that area. So he would have grown up there, and possibly it may appear that his mother came from the Mapale family, and that. But the challenge, the biggest challenge with especially lineage of Africans, and that when it comes to royal families especially, is that a lot of it was distorted, erased, very intentionally. You know, if anyone today went to the archives in Pretoria and asked for any file about the Macholokos and that, they'll be shocked that you get files that speaks and says Macholokwe this, and when you open the file, you might find the file says a picture and this, and when you open the actual file and that, there is no picture. So it tells you at a certain stage, this picture was taken. This picture was put in a file, but was later released. I read another book by, I think it was by a Frenchman and that, who was doing research on Macholoko and that. And what he said in there, he said that he realized that there was a lot of information that was intentionally removed on the history of the Macholokwe on archives, from the archives and that. So it makes then very difficult for one to be able to trace everything to the T. You know, it leaves us only dependent on oral history told. And the problem with oral history is that it's only family-wide. So there comes to at a certain point where oral history cannot tell because this event happened in Bloemfontein when the family was in Limpopo. And so that's the limitations of it. But we keep looking. All of us, we keep searching ourselves and that. And when he was still alive and that, I think that's as really much as we could have looked at and found out around it. So, you know, for me and that, I still keep documenting. You know, I still meet every Lekgolokwe person and try to understand, do they know who they are, where do they come from? And unfortunately, the majority of them and that have no idea. You know, especially the majority will tell you that in the 1905, 1906, my family came to Soweto. And that's it. Where do they come from Soweto? Oh, well, they came from Eastern Free State, maybe. And no trace of that afterwards. Because when we came to live in the townships especially, there was no incentive to really trace back and still keep things. I find those that remained in the rurals and that still kept and knew things a little bit more. I think also one other thing that was intentionally done at that stage that stole a lot of our identity was the way we bury people. You'd be surprised. We buried but Avalon and those places and that. These people were burying in their farms. We were burying in mass areas and that. When you bury like that, if you go down to Avalon and that, you find thousands of Molois and that. It's difficult to even trace. Where do they come from? Who is this person? It is those that remained in the farms that are still able to tell you. It is the grandfather here and his son and his grandson and his great-grandson. But when we buried in these townships, we were burying with migration happening. We buried their father here and we buried their father, a son in Katlehong. And we buried a great son in Rustenburg. And that family has already lost who they are. It becomes extremely difficult to try to reconstruct their history because
they're scattered.
Completely.
Sure.
And this is where it was. And the problem with it also, Mamia, was that we buried you as a Moloi. But the problem with burying you as a Moloi is that it still steals away your identity. Moloi can still be part of his tuko sako and everything. But your father needs to be there. So when you hear people saying someone was senzangakhona kajama, that was very important. It didn't mean he was no longer Zulu. He was still Zulu. But he was senzangakhona kajama. My father was Litsielo Wanakalanone. That's very important because there could have been other Litsielos. And when you try to go and trace history, you will find other Litsielos. But which one was this one? This one was the son of Nakalano. Now that was very important. And even today, when we put these beautiful tombstones on our graves and that, and we've just written the name of this person and that, in 100 years' time, who will be able to match him to his kids? We just wrote, his name is so-and-so Moloi. We matched nothing to his kids. So there was value in calling a son by his father. You know, I am Matulela Walitsielo. You know, that's very important. When you talk of my children, you talk of Tau Wamatulela. You talk of Lesego Wamatulela. All of them refilwe Wamatulela, Lethabo Wamatulela, Letlotlo Wamatulela. This means that you are linking these people. But when we bury you and say nothing about the links that you are leaving, we are then intentionally taking your history away from you. Because you can never be linked when you are gone. And this is why I say every time, what is beyond the horizon? We thank you, Mom. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Lovely moment spent with His Royal Highness, Kgosi Moloi. Thank you so much to everybody who joined in. Yeah, Dr. Zulu, you know, so very personal and deep episode for all of us here at the MOYA family. Please look out for his episodes. Just since you're on the channel, just search there, Zulumathabo. All his episodes will come on because he contributed a lot to our school. Umoya Ulight, Umoya Ubright. Thank you to everybody liking, sharing, and subscribing. Thank you especially to the members who help us keep our lights on. See you again next time.
Who are you when all you were has been diluted by lies and white lines cancelling out all that which has been written of your history? Why do you look at yourself as a mystery? Doesn't the sun shine because you open your eyes? Doesn't the moon stay situated within the same stars your DNA sparkles off? Your spirit knows that surely corner into it off. Buza umoya so you may return to being well off. Because spiritually you are rich, yet your ancestors cry because you are out of reach. But yours is to command all elements while God takes inspiration from the very mirror she looked at to become. Remember who you are and never finish just when they think that with you they are done.